Colourbot, written by David MacPhail, illustrated by David Creighton Pester. Mr. Braithwaite was a painter and decorator. He was clever, for he'd invented a robot to help him paint. "I call it Colourbot," he declared, as he arrived at his first job that morning. He was going to paint a fence for Mrs. Potts. "It can paint any colour you like: blue, yellow, green, red, even a rainbow." "I'd just like a nice plain white, please," said Mrs. Potts nervously. "No problem," said Mr. Braithwaite. "White is the easiest colour of all." The robot flashed its lights cheerfully and then whizzed through its work in a jiffy. Bleep! "Well done, Colourbot," said Mr. Braithwaite. The robot gave a satisfied bleep. Their second job that day was to freshen up a factory wall. "The same old grey colour will do," said Mr. Snobbs, the factory manager. "No problem," beamed Mr. Braithwaite. "Colourbot is loaded with white and black. It's amazing. It can mix the two colours together to make any shade of grey you like." The robot beeped, flashed its lights, and then shot through its work in moments. "Good job, Colourbot." But when Mr. Braithwaite turned his back, Colourbot stretched out its arm and squirted some more paint. It left behind something new, a tiny portrait of its own robot face. At the outdoor swimming pool, Mr. Braithwaite explained the simple job of painting a shed blue. "Blue is a primary colour. It's the same colour as the water, so just paint what you see." But Colourbot was only half listening, for it was flashing its lights and waving at a girl coming down the slide. Mr. Braithwaite went off to read his newspaper in peace. However, when he returned, he found a big problem. "I didn't mean you should paint exactly what you see," he cried, before slipping on a wet patch and tumbling into the swimming pool. "Ah!" Next was the community centre. "We'd like a nice warm shade of orange," said Mr. Kraft, the manager. "No problem," mumbled Mr. Braithwaite. "My robot is loaded with all the primary colours, blue, red and yellow. It can mix them to make secondary colours, like orange or purple." He leaned down to whisper to his robot, "For orange, mix the red and yellow. Are you sure you understand?" Colourbot beeped, but its gaze was drawn to some children painting beautiful bright suns. While his robot set to work, Mr. Braithwaite went off to his van. But when he got back, there was a huge problem. "Oh no! It's a big orangey mess!" Mr. Braithwaite cried, before putting his foot in a cleaning bucket and falling with a huge clatter. "Ah!" Their last job was at the local school. "We'd like a nice cool tint of green in our library," said Ms. Chung, the head teacher. "No problem," quivered Mr. Braithwaite. He leaned down to speak to his robot. "Green is another secondary colour. You just need to mix the blue and the yellow together. Have you got that, Colourbot?" The little robot beeped, but couldn't help noticing all the lovely books. Mr. Braithwaite went off to calm down with a cup of tea, but when he returned, he found an absolutely massive problem. "Colourbot, I've had enough! It's the junkyard for you!" The teachers and children pleaded. "Please don't junk Colourbot." "It's a robot. It's supposed to do what it's told," Mr. Braithwaite replied. "But what kind of robot can create beautiful art like this mural?" cried Ms. Chung. "Art?" Mr. Braithwaite peered at the mural, then at his robot, and gasped. "Gosh, you're right. It's not just a robot after all. Colourbot, you're an artist."